Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the WARC Indian History Podcast. I'm Utkarsh.
Namaste, Sumedha from Geneva.
It's not, we just met last week. It feels like we just met last week, or has it been a while since we've talked?
It's been a while, Utkarsh.
I'm just putting the elephant in the room out there for
Yes,
getting right into it.
yes, I know. We are always on the back foot, but I hope we have a very forgiving audience. So I know they keep forgiving us and they listen to us when we can get our act together.
Absolutely. And today, the topic is something we've been talking about doing for a long time. I think when we started this podcast, we made a reference that this is something we wanted to talk about. And finally, we're going to get around to doing it.
But the day
And
has come.
but the day has come. And I want to give a little bit of background why I think it's pertinent, right? Because a lot of things that we discuss on the podcast, a lot of things that are historic or very, very important in Indian context often have been either sensationalized or treated as something that's a bit more superstitious, for lack of a better word, by the modern Western view gaze. And I think a lot of it comes down to some foundational belief differences, which is why I wanted to talk, because I had asked to talk about consciousness, and you may think that what does consciousness have to do with history? But for me, if you look at a couple of topics that we discussed, Jyotish, for example, right, which from a quote unquote scientific lens looks very superstitious because you're talking about the how planets affect basically someone's consciousness, right? It sounds very, very what's the word for it? What's the word when people say in voodoo? What's the word for it? Voodoo juju, whatever that's called. It sounds a little bit like that. I'm forgetting the exact phrase. But
Okay.
what I wanted to say is that it's important to discuss this because when you examine the Indian belief, and I have a very, very basic understanding, which is why I wanted to talk and understand it better from you, you then realize that it is not a difference between being scientific and unscientific. It's a difference in terms of a foundational belief system. And honestly, even what you and I call science today, there is always foundational beliefs. There's an underlying belief that you take for granted, and then you build everything on top of that belief, right? So that's kind of what we wanted to discuss today. So consciousness is the topic of our discussion today. Where would you like to begin? Hmm.
So Utkarsh, that's a good background to why we wanted to do this and how everything will come together. I think it would be important to start with what are the really basic differences between how matter, consciousness, time, science, elements, all these things are thought of in the Western tradition and how they are thought of in the Indian tradition. Therefore, what is the nature of history and time? What is the nature of chronology?
Yeah.
What is time linear?
Hmm.
Is time circular? Is time under the control of some entity? Is it out of control? All these things have been dealt with in great depth and continue to be dealt with in great depth in Indian philosophy.
Hmm. Hmm.
So have Western philosophers thought of it, but I'll make a difference here between the ancient Greek philosophers, Plato, Aristotle, etc., and the Christian
Yeah.
ones. Because the
Hmm.
Greek ideas were kind of, they you could put them together with the Indian ones, but sometimes the Christian worldview just doesn't gel. So maybe we can start
I
with
actually
the
wanted to just
differences.
maybe we can use this as a jumping off point because I wanted to start with something very something that I noticed, and perhaps it could be a starting off point because there's this the breadth of our conversation is immense, right? You've got everything from
Yes.
consciousness, physical universe, time, all of that, right? So just
Hmm.
to start off from a foundational assumption that I always see, or that is what you and I, or rather anybody, not you and I, but people living in the modern Western world, you take for granted. Even when you look at people exploring theories of consciousness, etc., what people take for granted is that the physical universe that you perceive, that you and I perceive, is preeminent. That's the foundational layer of reality. That is foundational reality. And consciousness is emergent from this physical world, which is to say that
Hmm.
the atoms and whatever get together, they form an intelligent system. And somehow, by magic, the intelligent system becomes conscious, right? At some point in time, the
Yes.
fungi
Yes.
or the bacteria or the amoeba became conscious and became aware of itself. That
Yes.
is a foundational belief. And it seems like a very rational foundational belief, because of course the world is around us, obviously. Right. So I want you to start from there. Is this consistent with, or rather, what is the ancient or the traditional Indian belief in this regard, and how
Okay.
does it differ from this?
Yes. So one thing you have to realize, Utkarsh, is that Indian thought systems, Vedic thought systems, are not monolithic. There are six darshans, six ways of
Okay.
thinking.
Okay.
And of those six ways, some, like Advait Vedanta is very famous in the West. So everyone knows
Okay.
about it. Others may not be that famous, but I will.
Everyone is a is a big word, but yes. But
Okay,
yes, go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
Everyone who is interested in philosophy perhaps knows about it, but there are other systems of
Hmm.
philosophy which are not all that famous. So, sorry, people, a little bit about the different systems of philosophy is
Hmm. Hmm.
actually in order. So, there is a very interesting paper by Subhash Kak where he puts all these six. Now, these six are Mimamsa, Vedant. Think of it as one pair. The other pair is Nyaya and Vaisheshik. And the third pair is Yoga and Sankhya. Which is the oldest and which is the preeminent one? They all argue with each other about it. The thing which struck me right now when you said what you said is that this idea of everything coming from atoms joining together, etc., is exactly the idea which was put forth in the Vaisheshik system. Remember, this is one of the Indian systems of thinking by Kanad, again, many thousands of years ago. So it is exactly his theory that the basis of all existence is the atom. He calls it the Parmanu. And what is a Parmanu? It is, in fact, the actual definition as you understand it in science. If you keep dividing up things, and that which is indivisible becomes the atom or the Parmanu. And it is this which is the building block of the universe, so to speak. So they divide in many different ways. And when they divide in different ways, then you have creation or then you have Srishti. Now, there are two questions here. One is there somebody who's doing all this? Then it becomes what? It becomes a form of theism. It becomes a form of understanding God in a particular way, that God is making all these atoms combine in different ways. So your physical world, your consciousness, spirit, matter, everything comes out of this. But there is another stronger point of view within this Vaisheshik which says that it's not like this. There is something which makes them combine and recombine and come up with different things, but they fall short in explaining what exactly is this. How do these atoms combine and recombine? Now, we have also in the Western tradition, you have Darwinism and evolution, which tells you that when they combine and recombine in different ways, depending on what the physical circumstances are, there is this whole theory of evolution. So these are connected to each other, but you realize the problem with this Parmanu system, Utkarsh. Now we know that the atom is not indivisible. You have so many things which are smaller than the atom.
No,
You
but
are
isn't that a definitional problem? The definition of Parmanu is what cannot be divided. So maybe it's not an atom. Maybe it's whatever constitutes an atom. Sounds like that just sounds like
perhaps yes.
nomenclature to me more than anything else.
Uh, if you look at the entire way in which the Parmanu is envisaged, if
Hmm.
we start thinking of Parmanu, say, as the modern boson, then what
Hmm.
you will need to do is tweak that theory a little bit. Although I take your point that instead of the atom or the Parmanu, you substitute the boson. However, if
Hmm.
you do that, and then you'll have to maybe tweak the theory a little bit. The problem
Okay.
of what makes these atoms or Parmanus combine and recombine remains. What is it? If it is Ishwar, then it becomes very simple. Then it becomes another form of theism, creationism. So simple. But Vaisheshik, most people do not believe in that. So that is one darshan
Hmm.
which is actually a lot like the physics or chemistry of
Hmm.
today or
Hmm.
of the past. Dalton's chemistry would be very, very similar to Kanad's Vaisheshik.
And even modern physics or chemistry doesn't really explain the why. It just knows what happens, right?
What
It
is
doesn't
happening?
it doesn't
Yes.
know why it is happening, right?
Yes, yes. So
That
then
goes
if
into a
we,
different, yeah.
yes, if we want to go into the why, then we'll have to deal with other darshans and other scheme of things. Now
Mm-hmm.
these others are, one is of course, one is Vedant, which is seen as the crowning glory of the Vedas, therefore it is called Vedant, although its correct name is, there is Uttar Mimamsa and Purva Mimamsa. So Purva Mimamsa is the original one, which is in the Ved, which is Karma Kand, which is based on the power of sound, on the power of mantra. So for them, creation is sound and consciousness is sound. We are not going to go into that one because what we will today, I have to do some kind of selection. Okay, we can't talk about all of them. So the selection I've done is Sankhya and Vedant. So when we look at Vedant and Mimamsa, they are kind of sister philosophies, and Sankhya and Yoga sister philosophies, and we'll see in terms of consciousness and matter what is the difference between these two. If does consciousness come from matter or does matter come from consciousness, and why is that significant, Utkarsh? And I would like an answer from you on this.
Oh, it is very significant. So, for example, if everything comes from matter, then the world is essentially, there's a forgetting the word for it, where everything is the world is
But
deterministic,
yeah, predetermined. Yeah, yes,
because
determined.
ultimately everything follows the laws of physics. Laws of physics can only work in one way. You and I may interpret it in a certain way, but ultimately everything can only happen in one way because the laws of physics are one thing. So if everything depends on matter, from my perspective, it means if everything is based on matter, it means everything is deterministic. Free will or choice is an illusion if everything is indeed matter based, is my interpretation of it.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it does matter. On the other hand, which is the, and by the way, this seems more logical or rational because it does seem like you live in a physical world. On the other hand, if consciousness becomes preeminent, then that's a whole different ball of of potatoes, which we don't even, I don't even know where to begin exploring that
Yes.
thought.
Yeah. So then, then it becomes kind of illusion, Maya, all those things. Yes. So that's true. So as long as we know why we are pursuing this thought. And
Hmm.
again, Utkarsh, I would just like to add my little bit here. What happens in this very deterministic, linear time scale kind of thinking is that all of your past and all of your future is on one line,
Yes.
and that one line seems to be in, because we are in the Western system today, it is a very Eurocentric universalism, that this is the way that everything has to go, this is the way the world will go, this is the way time goes. Now for
Hmm.
Indian philosophy, one, of course, other than the issue of matter and consciousness, time is not linear, time is circular. And time is also, a lot of universes exist at the same time. Now after watching Marvel movies, everyone knows about this, these parallel universes, etc., etc. However, this is something which is so old that it is mentioned in so many of our Purans. For
Hmm.
example, in the Devi Puran, Devi tells Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh that I have visited many worlds and I have seen many Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. I have seen many Indras.
Hmm.
So you are very puny in front of me because I am above all these laws which govern you in your cosmos. So these kind of things have been very very old and thought about in a very serious way. I mean, Marvel is for your entertainment, but these different universes, etc., which exist are not for your entertainment. They are metaphysical realities in a certain philosophical system which gives you some meaning about the entire world. Before I go on further, there's something that I must mention. All the Indian systems of philosophy want to talk about, they want to understand the world around them. And they want to understand the laws of the world, of the cosmos. What is this called? This is called Reeth. These are the laws of the cosmos. So you have Reeth, Satya, and Dharma. Without going into details, Dharma is actually the action on this plane, on our plane of the cosmic laws. So, and it upholds all of existence. So, what's the purpose of Mimamsa or Nyaya or Sankhya? They want to understand these laws which govern the world, and they do this through a focus on dharma. So all these Indian philosophies, this is the raison d'etre for Kant or Hegel or Haeckel or anybody. this kind of overarching idea was very often not there, although Hegel is somebody who is more similar to the way in which we speak and the way in which we think than others. So
Hmm.
let's talk about, I'm going to talk to you about Sankhya.
Hmm.
So what does Sankhya is one of the oldest systems of philosophy. The legendary person who put forth all the laws that the system of Sankhya was called Kapil Muni. Now, what is the basic thing that Kapil Muni says? That there is nothing new which is created in this world. Whatever is there in the world is already there. Isn't it similar to a law of physics, Utkarsh? I am
Yeah,
no
yeah,
physicist. Yeah, I am
yeah.
no physicist. But isn't this very similar in terms of how much energy is there in the world? So what they say is that nothing new is created; it just changes form. And it begins with zero, shunya, nothing. But is that nothing characterless and elementless? No, it has, that shunya has all the qualities, all the gunas as they are called, which are going to express themselves. So all those are there in that karan, that's called the karan. And karya is this whole prakriti, this whole srishti, not prakriti, this whole srishti that you see around yourself. So just get this idea. That is why so many times it is said that for Indian philosophy, everything starts with a zero, with a shunya, with nothing. And in that nothing is everything. So this nothing, which always has all elements, it also has the desire to do. That is called Karma Shakti, the desire to do. This is what everything comes from. No matter how many changes happen, the total sum of these things, which is called Padarth, the elements in the world, which means those elements they are made up of, and the desire or energy to recombine. So those are always there. So creation as Srishti comes from something. This something has all the characteristics of everything. And what is it called? This is called Prakriti. Remember this word, very, very important. Prakriti. So this is the reason for everything. This is the Karan for everything. And Karya is the extension of or the matter. So you see here, one thing that you have is Prakriti, which is perfect. There's a balance in Prakriti. Then there is something which is completely imperfect, which is called Vikriti. And there is something in between. So remember these three states also: perfection, complete, imperfection or chaos, and something in between. Perfection moves towards imperfection, imperfection moves towards perfection. Isn't that also a little similar to something?
That sounds
And
like who is it?
entropy. Entropy.
Yeah. Also, one philosophical, forgetting which philosopher, right? Where you have the different. Is it Hegel itself or is it someone else?
It could be. Yes, yes, yes. It
Yeah.
could be Hegel. Yes. So you
Correct.
see, that which is perfect, that is called Sat. That which
Yeah.
is imperfect, that is called Tam. And the movement towards these two, this is called Raj. These are the three qualities or three gunas. This is the movement for combining and recombining. These three things are there in Prakriti. So when they are in
That is
balance,
Hegel's dialectic at the end, isn't it? That's what it is. A constant or is
yes
it different?
and
Again, I'm not a philosopher. I have
yes,
very vague
yes,
understanding, but yes.
yes,
I was
yes
trying to
and
remember the
no.
word. I just remembered it. Yeah.
I think you are correct to some extent, Utkarsh. I have often thought about this. There are some differences, but yes,
Of
in
course.
general, you can think of it as a kind of dialectics. Yes, but there are many differences. Let's see if we can come to what those differences are. So when all these things are in balance, Sat, Raj, and Tam, these three are in balance, and nothing happens. Everything is quiet, stabd, and shunya. The minute something starts moving, then these things become out of balance. Once they become out of balance, that is what is creation. That is how creation is done. So you see, we are talking about Prakriti. What is Prakriti? Prakriti is matter. But matter has some kind of energy and activity inside it. That energy and activity is not consciousness, but it has some energy, karma shakti inside it. There are some equilibriums inside it which are disturbed, and then things start happening, and what cannot be seen, when everything is zero, nothing can be seen, then it starts being seen, it becomes vyakt, then it becomes srishti. It is both subtle as well as really large. So subtle can mean very small, it can also mean something like space, or it can also mean something like vayu or wind. And the gross or big or the sthul, huge things, that maybe nadi, pahad, etc., etc., all those things. Now the question of what about soul, mind, intelligence, the eye, are different senses, what about these, where do they fit in? Now, I'm going to tell you one evolutionary biologist who I am taking as a kind of representative of the evolutionary biological viewpoint. This person was called Ernst Haeckel. So, Ernst Haeckel said what you said in the beginning, that all these, the soul, the mind, the intelligence, the ego, and all our senses depend on the body, because obviously they are extensions of the body. If the body goes, all of it goes. And if there's a problem, suppose somebody is hit on the head, their brain is damaged, then all their man, buddhi, ahankar, everything is affected. So then obviously all this depends on the body. Therefore, for him, the soul is neither indestructible nor is it immortal, which is completely in opposition to the way we think in the Indian context. Laws are fixed, physical laws are fixed, and as you said, it's deterministic, and everyone is ruled by those. Now, let's come to Sankhya, our Indian way of thinking. All these man, buddhi, etc., these are part of Prakriti, but they cannot emerge from it, they are inside it. So, Prakriti cannot really know anything by itself, because it's just one thing. So what is needed is a knower. What is the knower? The knower is what we are talking about, consciousness, spirit. So without a knower, nothing will happen. Prakriti will remain still, because Prakriti cannot know
So is this
itself.
knower part of Prakriti or a separate from
No,
Prakriti?
no, separate.
Separate. Okay.
Yes,
So it
and
is
this,
observing Prakriti.
yes, and this knower is called Purush. This Purush is called, sometimes Gya, sometimes there are many names for it, but it is
Purush,
basically,
male.
it doesn't mean male, Utkarsh. Doesn't
But
mean male.
okay, but it is
Yeah,
the same word.
it's the same
That's
word, but
confusing.
it's confusing, but
Okay.
just forget about the fact that Purush and
Okay, I'll
Nari
forget
mean
about it. I'll
something.
just
Yeah.
asking because it's the same word.
It
Okay.
is exactly the same word. The meaning has
And
nothing
that's a
to do with
coincidence?
gender. Yeah, that's a coincidence. That's just the way, I suppose, language evolved. And also, Utkarsh, Sanskrit has, if you want to know why there are multiple meanings of a word, you have to go back into the root of the word. One day we can do an analysis of Purush and Stri and everything, and tell you
That sounds
why these
fascinating. We'll get a huge
yeah.
audience for that analysis of Sanskrit words. Can't wait.
Okay, less of the sarcasm, please.
Okay, but go ahead, please.
Yeah. So Purush, which is not man, Purush is consciousness, Purush is the knower. So Prakriti is matter, and matter cannot know itself. The knower is Purush. So it is separate, completely separate from Prakriti, from Sat, Raj, Tam, everything, and it has no characteristics. It has no gunas, nothing, and it cannot change itself. It is an essence of spirit, of consciousness, which can only know, it cannot change itself. So you see, put simply, Prakriti is non-conscious, it is Jad, which means it is a matter which cannot change itself. But remember, it has some energy or karma shakti inside it. Now Purush has consciousness. Purush and Prakriti are the two things that we need to understand. So there is no overarching God here, Utkarsh. You realize that creation comes forth when Purush and Prakriti meet. And it is for when does Prakriti start moving and something starts happening? When there is disequilibrium of Sat, Raj and Tam. And consciousness of Purush understands all this. And then this Purush and Prakriti
How does that
interaction,
disequilibrium happen?
that disequilibrium is a natural process. Because, like I told you, that perfection moves towards imperfection, and imperfection moves
So
towards
it is
perfection.
self-contained to Prakriti itself. It's got nothing to
Yes,
that. Okay.
yes, yes. But Prakriti does not know what to do because it is a single entity, and you cannot sit on your own shoulders and look at yourself, can you? You can't. To look at you, to look at, so this is an example used by Bal Gangadhar Tilak in his Gita Rahasya, and I really like this example. So that's why he said it is posited, it is obvious, it is kind of logical, that there has to be somebody to see what is happening inside Prakriti. All these things are happening inside Prakriti. Prakriti cannot see it. So this is what Purush does. So everything is part of Prakriti. When it starts expanding itself as it comes into contact with Purush. So what is the very interesting way? It is
Prakriti
like,
sounds like the physical world or nature.
yes,
What is it?
correct, correct, correct. It is the
Okay.
physical world. Don't use the word nature, because then nature and
Oh, then we get
culture,
into
the
Mother
English words.
Nature and all that
Yeah, yeah,
other
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. So
Okay.
let's not do that, because these are not gendered.
Hmm.
This is matter and spirit. These are not gendered.
Okay.
So Prakriti is the doer, but does not know what to do. Lots of things are happening inside it, but it doesn't know what to do. What gives it
Hmm.
direction? Consciousness. But consciousness cannot do anything, it can only know. So these two have to come together for something to happen. Consciousness can direct you, but can't do anything. And Prakriti can do a lot of things, but doesn't know what to do. So these two have to come together. So when Purush meets Prakriti, then this disbalance happens. Prakriti spreads itself, makes itself Vyakt, and actually the Vyakt world, matter, is actually called, it's given another name, Vikriti, but we don't need to go into that, but it comes into being. And what are the things that come into being? Sagun Ishwar. What is Sagun Ishwar? That Ishwar which has some characteristics. Okay, just flag this or just put this in your head.
Okay. Yeah.
Time comes
Hmm.
into being. Okay, so Prakriti and Purush are beyond time.
Okay.
Time comes into being only when Prakriti and Purush meet. Then Swabhav, which means what is
Where are
your
they meeting?
nature. Who? Prakriti and Purush.
Where are they meeting?
Where are they meeting, Utkarsh? At your nearest mall.
Coffee day.
Yeah, cafe coffee day.
No, but okay. I'm
No,
trying to understand.
this is a cosmic process.
Okay.
These forces exist in the cosmos. The
Okay.
force of
But is
consciousness
is the
exists.
cosmos okay? Just to be very very literal here, isn't the cosmos inside Prakriti because it is
Yes.
all the
Well,
there is?
you are right. I'm just trying to, explain that these are things that are happening. I don't know what word to use other
So
than
let me put it
cosmos,
another way.
but you
It's
are
easy to
correct.
understand. It's easy to visualize or understand Prakriti as everything that exists that you the physical world. It's easy. It's the whole universe.
Yes.
Everything.
And yes,
Where
in
is
fact,
consciousness?
the
Yeah.
cosmos is also Prakriti. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah. So where is
Yeah.
consciousness there?
Consciousness is separate from all this.
But where is it? Because it's the
So
whole physical
it's,
universe
yes, so
is
it's outside the physical universe.
okay. Okay. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think that makes sense. So you see, Purush cannot do anything. Prakriti can do a lot, but does not know what to do. The two of them get together, and then the whole excitement happens. Everything happens. Then is the dance of creation. And there is something called Purusharth, which I keep mentioning to you, Utkarsh. These are the desires and ambitions and objectives of life. They come from Purush. So these are the things that Purush wants to get done when Prakriti and Purush are dancing together. So the dance of creation is a very, very
Is there
Hindu
any reference
concept.
to the painting behind you?
Yes, no, yes, indeed, Natraj. Yes, this is Ardhanarishwar in a dancing pose. So the dance of creation and the dance of destruction, those are again huge concepts which I will just mention over here. So Purush thinks that this whole creation is me. It does not realize that it is beyond physical matter. Then it starts thinking this whole creation is me, and it is enmeshed in this world. When Purush realizes that it is different from this physical world, then it attains mukti. And then the whole thing becomes pure consciousness, and the physical world become different. What does Purush become? Purush becomes alone. In Hindi, in Sanskrit, this is called Keval, that means only one, and it is called a state of Kaivalya, which the common word moksha you would have heard of perhaps. So that is Kaivalya. So once Prakriti leaves, Purush is incapable of action. It cannot do anything. This is something you must really remember. It only gets enmeshed in this creation and physical world and all the rest of it because Prakriti is there. If it is, when once it realizes I am different from Prakriti, I am separate, I am alone, I am consciousness, I am beyond this physical world, then there you go. Attains Kaivalya.
So Purush is one. Let's
Yes.
clarify this. But you have multiple consciousness everywhere.
Excellent question. Excellent question. I will come to this. This is a very major difference between Vedant and between Sankhya. So you see, what is the meaning of Sankhya? Sankhya comes from Sankhya, which means what? Counting. Many. So this is exactly what Sankhya thinks. That there are multiple Purushas, there are multiple consciousnesses. Each of these is a separate process of its own. So each Purush has to separate itself from Prakriti and find moksha.
Yeah, because Prakriti by definition is just one, because it is everything.
Yes.
Right.
And it is the interaction of these so many different Purushas. Each of these is a singular, separate individual experience according to Sankhya. So therefore there are Asankhya Purushas, and that is why it is called Sankhya, to count all of them.
Okay.
But what is the big difference here between Vedanta and Sankhya? Vedanta also believes in Prakriti and Purush. But it says that there is a Parabrahma, there is some super being beyond consciousness and beyond matter, and that is Parabrahma. Otherwise, everything that I've told you just now about how Purush and Prakriti interact, how they come into being, all these are also agreed to by Vedanta.
Okay.
But Vedanta says that there is only one main super consciousness. From that emerges both Purush and Prakriti. That means the kind of consciousness which arrives on earth that you and I know of, as well as all of Prakriti, that all emerges from the main consciousness. And there is a particular reason why people think that there are so many different Purushas, because you and I know that there are millions of people in the world. So there are so many different Purushas. In that sense, we'll agree with Sankhya. But it's not like that for Vedanta. What does it say? It is one. Why do we see that there are so many? That is a concept that they call, one of course is the concept of Maya. Prakriti is Maya. It spreads itself all around because Purush and Prakriti have met. But the other thing is called Upadhi Bhed. Upadhi is limiting conditions. These limiting conditions are things like, we experience the world through our own bodies. My own particular body, your own particular body, your mind, my mind, the world I live in, the world you live in, which is not exactly the same. These are the limiting conditions. Because of these limiting conditions, we do not understand that Parabrahma, that supreme one consciousness, and we think of them as so many others. So this is a very, very basic difference.
But if you really think about it, you cannot confirm anyone's consciousness. You cannot confirm you cannot confirm anyone is conscious other than yourself.
Yes.
Can you? You can't.
Yes. That is why we need all these theories and mental experiments. That's why we need these thought experiments to be able to do these things, this logic. So over here, I think is a good time to talk about what is science according to Indian thought, according to Indic thought.
Okay.
So I told you that Prakriti and Purush meet, then it leads to Srishti. So Gyan is knowing that Srishti is one, and there is one Mool, Dravya, one Shunya, that is called Gyan, the real knowledge of what is the basic characteristic of Prakriti. That
Hmm.
basic of characteristic of Prakriti is that it is one. There is one Mool Dravya, which means basic element is just one. This is called Gyan, which
Hmm.
is in English knowledge. Then what is Vigyan, which is in English science? Vigyan is to know how from this one Mool Prakriti so many different things have come into being. So there, then you can have all your physical laws, your
Hmm.
laws of
Hmm.
chemistry, your social sciences, your aeronautics or math or whatever. So that is Vigyan. If you remember when we did the session on mathematics, we talked about par and apar. So par is this absolute reality, this prakriti, this avyakt prakriti, and apar is worldly reality, which we understand through math, physics, history, X,
Okay.
Y, Z.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
so you
Hmm.
see, we have a definition for knowing the world. It's not all, you know, a woozy woozy intellectual thought experiment. There is a certain model for knowing the real world, and for knowing the real world in terms of whichever science you want to think of. And therefore, all these, when you think of our Chaturdash Vidyasthanam or the 14 seats of learning, these different sciences are included in that, although in a very different epistemology, but they are included in that. So, shall I, before we, I think, go on to discuss, at least I want to say a few things about how this impacts the study of history.
Yes.
And that I want to say,
And I
and
also want to, and maybe at the right point in this conversation, I also want to understand this entire linkage to Jyotish, right? Because ultimately, if you remember during that episode, I asked you how are we assuming that individual consciousness or whatever it is are getting affected. So I want to understand that because this kind of links there, right? It goes back to your
hmm,
theory, your metaphysical understanding of consciousness. So if you can circle
hmm.
to that also at some point, that would also be good.
Okay, okay. So then, before that, I just want to show you one chart, which will make a lot of the things that we are talking about
Okay.
very clear, and it will also show you where your body, mind, eyes, nose, etc., where do they fit in? Sky, everything, where does it fit in? And how do they fit in the different systems of Sankhya and Vedanta? So let me try and share something with you. I hope I succeed. So, Utkarsh, can you see the genealogical tree? I am very sorry. The
Yes.
spelling of genealogical seems to be wrong. And I
Yeah,
apologize. It's not
it's some
my
other
spelling.
spelling, but I can see it.
Yeah, yeah. So, this is from a very important book by Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak, 2 volumes of analysis of the Bhagavad Gita, and basically a crash course in Indian philosophy. So now you see, what is this over here? This spirit and matter. What is spirit? Spirit is Purush, consciousness. Okay. And matter is Prakriti, which is in the Vedant system. This is what is called Maya. I've mentioned Maya a lot of times, Utkarsh, that which gives you the illusion of the physical world. So for the Vedanti, this matter is just an illusion. This physical world is also just an illusion, which is brought about by the acting together of Purush and Prakriti, spirit and matter,
But if
consciousness and
if this
matter.
is an illusion, then what is Prakriti then? Isn't that the real world?
No, Prakriti. So the real world is an illusion, Utkarsh, according to Vedant, not according to Sankhya, according to Vedant. Because if you want to think of Vedant, put something called Parabrahma on
As
top
the
of
bottom layer.
spirit and matter. Top layer,
Got it.
top layer, top layer.
Top layer rather, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
meant
yeah.
the
The
similar thing.
topmost
Yeah.
layer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Topmost layer is Parabrahma. Parabrahma is in getting projected in many ways. One is consciousness, one is matter, but neither the matter nor the consciousness are true. True is only Parabrahma. So everything is just a projection of Parabrahma. So you see, you have a spirit and you have matter. Then from matter, you get reason, then ahankar, then you have this is a very famous kind of understanding of the body, which is these 5 organs of perception, actions of mind and the mind are called the buddhi indriya, The karmendriya, the five organs of perception are eyes, ears, nose, skin, tongue, etc. Not etc. These are the five. Five organs of action are mouth, hands, feet, anus, genitals. These are the things through which you act. Then you have the mind. Then you have the inorganic world. What is this? The inorganic world and the five tanmatras. These all correspond to the actual organs of perception. So you have Shabd, Sparsh, Roop, Ras, Gandh, and then you have the five basic elements: Akash, Vayu, Agni, Jal, Prithvi. Now these are 25 elementary principles. I don't expect you to really understand all of them or go in depth into all of them, but this is a kind of snapshot. In this snapshot comes the understanding of the individual and the world and the cosmos. And this is the Sankhya system. If you just put Parabrahm on top of that, then it becomes the Vedantic system. And in the Vedantic system, it's either everything is one, which is Advait Vedant, or they say that this spirit is different from the main Parabrahma, then it becomes Dvait. But the whole system of these 25 elementary principles remains the same. This is the way in which the world is seen. Right? So I'm going to stop sharing now. Now, what I want to say over here is, whenever we have spoken of so many things, we've spoken of, say, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, epics, Purans, and then you have this very limited by the physical world kind of understanding that Western arbiters like to impose on all these things. So what for them, what is true? Only the physical world. How do you get to know the physical world? Through physical evidence. So in their historiography, there is a certain system in which certain physical evidences, like maybe ruins, papers, coins, etc., all these things are needed, and there is a very strict linear definition of how things have happened, and that is how they want to understand Indian thinking also. So, this leads to a lot of issues and problems, because a lot of the things that are written, for example, in our Itihas, that is Mahabharata and Ramayana, is not meant to be taken in a linear time scale at all. Because all these things have happened, will happen, and it's like a kind of circle where you circle back to the same thing again. Things are created, they are destroyed, and then they are created again. So we don't have this linear conception. Therefore, some of the things are difficult for people to put in a chronology. Western understanding wants to put things in a chronology. So they'll say, okay, this philosophical concept came into being at this date 1072 AD, and it was this person who did it because it is written in this book only at this time.
Consistent with real experience, how most people experience the world. It does seem linear.
Utkarsh,
at least the way you and I
sure.
experience it, or how is it experienced in a different way?
At a very gross level, when we are living our lives, perhaps yes. But the minute it becomes even slightly abstract and it becomes about understanding and knowledge, it changes. Take, for example, any concept, the thing I was talking about, that a concept has been for the first time written down in this book or composed in this book. Therefore, the concept of X came into being only at this time. Now, that need not
necessarily I wouldn't necessarily say that. I would say that concept got recognized or written down, but the concept has always existed.
Yes, but you see, Utkarsh, if you read the analysis of either our Dharma Shastras or Dharma Sutras or Itihas or Puran, unfortunately, this type of very, very chronological and very strictly chronological analysis is done all the time. So therefore, when somebody says that X concept was for the first time found in the Vishnu Puran, therefore, before that, people did not think of Atma. No, this is not a real example. I'm just giving you a false example. Then the whole understanding of this civilization and culture becomes off kilter, and it becomes wrong. Because things in our understanding, since they don't always happen in a linear way, to us it is very clear that if Lord Krishna was born at this time, whatever that time may have been, Lord Krishna had also appeared as Lord Ram. It's not a problem for us. because we know that time is cyclical and that things happen in a circle and they can happen again. And we know that Parabrahma takes avatar and comes to play with us, to play with Prakriti, and to take part in the dance of creation. So it's no surprise to us that there are 10 avatars. But it is a problem for the Western mind to even wrap their mind around this thing that the same Parabrahma took avatar as Lord Ram, Lord Krishna, Lord Narasimha, finds it difficult to understand. So, see, for us, even time is a tool in the hands of Parabrahma. For example, you take the concept of Mahakal. Lord Shiv is called Mahakal. Why? Because he is beyond time, he controls time. Why is Devi called Kali? Not because she is dark. She controls time. Then there is a very, very famous description of Devi who wears the Chandra and the Surya as two earrings in her ears. One side Surya, one side Chandra. What does it mean? Surya and Chandra are the two things by which we count time. Because days and nights pass, we become older, we die. But those two are merely earrings for her. They are her decoration. She can control them. She is above and beyond them. So you see, time is not a frozen, linear, fixed concept for us. And Utkarsh, I don't know all that much, in fact, nothing about quantum physics. But isn't it true? I mean, every one of these science fiction movies has this space-time warp. So now it's
Yeah.
become it's become a joke. So space-time warp comes out from every hero and every heroine's name, face. But this idea of time being something which is controlled by an entity which is larger than time, that is something that is inherent in our philosophy, and it impacts the study of and the understanding of our civilization and culture. Which is why this whole idea of matter, consciousness, Sankhya or Vedanta, or whichever way you understand it, if you understand time as being part of Prakriti, as part of the dance of creation, which is separate from consciousness, then you can see that time is not as simple and linear a thing as we experience it. Our experience is limited, Utkarsh. Can we understand the world only in terms of the very small interface that we have with this cosmos? That would be very limiting. To think of it only in terms of the very small ways in which humans understand or experience the cosmos. And for me, the reason why I felt that I was interested in this topic that you were positing is because I felt that this understanding or lack of understanding really impacts the study of history.
Yeah, I mean, and then anything that tries to go beyond the pure physical world
Yes.
seems to be, then something that's faith based or faith, it kind
Yes.
of becomes it kind of becomes a second class citizen in
Yes,
terms of
and Utkarsh, other than the standards of physical and material evidence which have been set down by this very materialistic view of the world, there is no evidence possible. So that makes a lot of difference. That really, really limits one a lot. Now, I agree that our daily experience is something which pushes us towards that path, but we have to go beyond our daily experience if we need to understand things in a larger sense. And now you were talking about Jyotish, and you were
yeah
talking about how we had discussed that Jyotish came from astronomy, from the idea that there was an impact on the earth, on Prithvi, of things that happen in the cosmos. So
yeah
closest to us is the moon. So the effect of the moon, the effect of the sun, the effect of the different planets. So we had discussed at the time, how is this possible? So in case we think of the interconnectedness of existence, of the interconnectedness of consciousness and matter, then it becomes very easy to understand that if there is an impact on the physical, there is an impact on the spirit. because spirit and matter are connected, because
Hmm.
consciousness and matter are connected. And if you are
Hmm.
a Vedanti, then they are obviously, they are from the same source.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if they are from the same source, then the impact is even easier to understand.
Hmm. Hmm.
If matter and consciousness are so closely connected, they are always in a dialectic process with each other, then it stands to reason that whatever affects Prakriti or matter will affect consciousness. And it affects your consciousness, which will again, since it's a dialectic, it will again affect Prakriti. Therefore, there will be some physical change. There can be a physical, after all, when there is an earthquake, or when a dam bursts, or when there's a flood, there are some events which have happened in space, so to speak, which have had a real impact on you. And these are huge real impacts, so we can see it. So, what about
Yeah.
other impacts which are subtle, which are sukshma? Those are also there. And that is, as you said, one of the basic principles of Jyotish. And Utkarsh, there's something which we haven't done yet, but I've been meaning to do it for a long time.
Hmm.
The concept of fingerprinting. Where did it come from? And how, that
We've,
the
have
idea
we
arose
talked
in
about it
India?
before? I think we
No.
mentioned it or something. No, we haven't not
Yes.
talked about it.
We
Okay.
have
Yes.
not talked about it, and we must, because
Yeah.
the idea of fingerprinting, the idea of this individual fingerprinting, and from where did it come? It comes from India. Specifically, the process also comes from India. It was done in the Calcutta office, Calcutta police. And then, of course, the credit was taken by a white man. But okay, doesn't that always happen? But the philosophy behind it is Indian philosophy. And it's a very similar one, of the interplay between consciousness and matter, and how consciousness will actually affect matter or Prakriti.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So that,
By the way,
of course, is
speaking of
something we
which,
must
since you
do.
said fingerprint, it's tangential,
Hmm.
but palmistry, since you mentioned it,
Yes, yes, both these. We'll do fingerprints and palmistry. We'll
there is
discuss
some
it one
basis
day.
for palmistry,
Palmistry, doesn't have
or
so much of a
when you go to
basis.
the
Yeah.
fair and then you have a gypsy woman. The gypsy is also Indian, I guess, in a way. Maybe
Yeah.
something to look at.
Oh, we have to do, yeah, we have to do gypsies also. Yeah. But palmistry, from whatever I have read, it is, and palmistry is not really Indian.
Okay.
Palmistry is not Indian. Fingerprinting is, palmistry is not
Okay.
Indian. So maybe one day we can do,
Hmm.
discuss
Hmm.
fingerprinting and palmistry and all the rest of it. Today we've done a kind of very abstract
Yeah.
and very, very, well, I hope not boring. All the people out
Beginners,
there.
your beginner's introduction to thinking of
Yes.
consciousness beyond the Western construct.
Yes. So I think the thing to remember is that consciousness is separate from matter in
Hmm.
our thinking.
Yes.
It does not arise from matter. So in, if you are a Vedanti, you will say that all of them come from Parabrahma, from the ultimate
Hmm.
creator, or otherwise these are forces which exist.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Matter exists, consciousness exists, they interact, and therefore various things
Yeah.
happen.
No, that's
And
that's that's it summed up in the sentence,
yes,
honestly. Versus
yes.
consciousness is emergent from matter. The
Hmm.
understanding here is it's separate from matter. Now, how
Yes.
exactly it's separated and that entire, there are different approaches, which is what you outlined.
Yes, yeah, and there are there has been serious study on it, and each and everything has been studied. How would it have emerged? And a very beautiful system has been made. I try to show you a little snapshot of that system.
Yep.
So, and also we try to tell you why we thought it's important to know all this. So next time when we mention that, this is the difference in Western thinking and Indian thinking, you'll know what we are talking about, especially with reference to history, historiography, and evidence. All these
Mm-hmm.
things become very limited if you think only of the physical world. And
Yeah.
Utkarsh, a lot of the scientific experiments are very limited to the physical world. They work in the physical world. An aeroplane will take off in New York, it will take off in Geneva and Delhi. And therefore, one tends to think that these are such overarching laws that there can be nothing beyond them.
Hmm.
However, this actually is at a very, what is called a very low level of understanding. These are very simple systems. To understand very, very complex systems, such simple things will not work. You need to have a more complex system of understanding.
Yeah.
So
Good.
yeah, so I hope at least your some of your
No,
questions
definitely.
have been
Very helpful
answered.
for me. Very helpful for me.
Yes, and
Yeah.
this is something you've been pushing me to do, so it's been good for me. I have clarified a lot of things in my own head too.
Hmm.
Next time we'll do something really light, maybe like vampires.
Hmm. Yes.
You remember we were
Giving,
going to do
yeah,
vampires when other things intervened.
yeah. Something else intervened. Okay,
Yes.
good. Good. Very good. This was helpful for me. This was my request more than anything else. I hope the audience
Yes.
audience finds it useful as well.
Yes, yes. And next time we'll make it really light, okay? Listen to this one in a slightly serious mode. And next time we'll make it much, much lighter.
Great.
So
See you next time
see you
then.
next time. Namaste.